Hey there guys, Glenn here from the Beardyman Craft Beers channel. Once again, thank you very much for joining me on another beautiful brew day. I'm going to be using the GrainFather again, which is heating up behind you. Today I am going to be doing a clone of Brewdog's Punk IPA, which is a drink I thoroughly enjoy. I have printed off page 2, I think, of Brewdog's recipe DIY dog for Punk IPA 2010 to current. That's for a 20 litre batch. Today I'm going to be making a 25 litre batch. So for that reason I had to kind of scale up the recipes in Beersmith, and I printed them out on my, I've kind of customised the printout sheet from Beersmith, the recipe sheet. To include a few pointers throughout the day, so I can kind of be taking notes and ticking a few boxes as I go, just to make sure that I haven't missed any vital steps. So what exactly is in this recipe? For those of you who don't know, I am going to tell you. As I mentioned, the original recipe from DIY Dog is for a 25 litre, and I'm going with a 20 litre, and I'm going with a 25 litre. So I have 6 kg pale malt Morris Otter, 0.35 kg of caramel crystal malt, and that's at 25 EBC. Then let's get down to the hops. I have, for the boil, I have 20 grams of Chinook, 50 grams of Antonium, 20 grams of Nelson Sav, and 17 grams of Simcoe. Then for the steeped hops or the whirlpool, I have 20 grams of Nelson Sav, 19 grams of Chinook, and then 16 grams of Simcoe. Then when I dry hop, I'll be dry hopping for, I think it's about 5 days. Yeah, 5 days. Again, 30 grams of Nelson Sav, and 15 grams of Chinook, and 15 grams of Simcoe, and then I leave that for probably about 2 to 3 weeks in primary, and then I'll keg after that, and then I leave the beer to age for about 30 days. So that, guys, is the recipe for my excuse me, for my Punk IPA. What I want to do today, before I start showing you what's going on behind me, or behind you on the GrainFather, is I'm going to show you how it also appears on the app itself. So I'm going to do a video grab or capture of the app, and basically I have taken the recipe again from Beersmith 2, and saved it across onto my Dropbox as a XML file, and then imported it then from my Dropbox on my phone into the GrainFather Connect app, and it transferred over very well. Okay, so the sparge water, I think of 20 litres, is now at 66 degrees, which is our target heat. And you can see that the GrainFather, the bar on the right hand side at 4%, will keep that at a consistent heat. The great thing as well about the GrainFather is it has that, well, with the Connect app, it has that delayed heating, which I probably should have set for a little bit earlier this morning, Saturday morning, because I got up a little bit earlier and it still wasn't kicking in. So that's a great feature to have. So I'm just going to show you how this looks on the app itself, and how I connect to the GrainFather, and then go about setting up my recipe. Okay, so our target temp has been reached. What I need to do now is add the top overflow pipe, connect that to the bottom one, push it down, and add our grain stopper. Once that's all ready, you can now add the grain. Okay, so I've added all my grains and I'm just giving it a good old mix. Give it slightly thick mash. Heavy grain bill on this one for the grain fodder. I think we should be good there now. Then on top, take out the grain stopper, get my little overflow inlet, push that down, about there, that should do the trick. Stick on my lid, connect my recirculation pipe. And then press set to start the mash. And there you can see the timer on screen and the target temperature and current temperature that kind of fluctuates, so it'll bring it back up to 66 now in a moment. So yeah, all good for our mash. Okay, so you can see now the time remaining on the mash is 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And what's happening there is you can see mash step 1 finished, setting target temperature to 76 for next mash step. So you probably heard the grain fodder beeping away there, and we do a mash out. So it's bringing the current temperature on the left hand side up to 76. And yeah, and then after that, then we can do an old spargy. Okay, so the mash out is about to finish, so I just pop that up on the screen there so you can see that on my phone. So I just want to show you actually how clear the wort is. Take off my recirculation arm. So it's saying that I need to add 14.5 litres of sparge water, so I'll start sparging now shortly. And just before I start sparging, I should push this down until it meets the grain, which is about there. Ouch! Ouchie, ouchie! Okay, and not too tight, just let it rest on top. And we should be good to start sparging. And what's great with the grain fodder is I can keep track of the sparge water that I add. I have another one now, another litre there to add. Click that forward. Okay, so the sparge has now finished. So I need to take my grain bin out. Just making sure that that is secure there. Lift and into a bucket. And we'll come back to that then shortly. And you can see now we are at 97 degrees. So we're close enough to our boil, so we'll get the boil going now shortly. Okay, so it's telling me to add my 60-minute hop additions. I just put in my bag and just add those hops into the net. So that's the 60-minute Chinook. And now we've 60 minutes there now under boil. Okay, so I've just put the lid back on now. The steep whirlpool is finished. I've attached the wort chiller, and what I'm basically doing is I'm pumping it through the wort chiller, through the chiller and back into the wort for at least 5 minutes, and maybe I'll do that for 10 minutes. The reason for that then is just to sanitize the wort chiller before I start cooling the wort and transferring over to my sanitized fermentation bucket. So just sanitizing my bits and bobs. This here is the yeast that I'll be using, the Safe Ale US 05, my go-to yeast for pale ales and IPAs. Okay, so I'm now cooling down the wort, and basically what's happening is in through the blue we have cold from the outside. It's going through the wort chiller, and also I'm pumping wort from the GrainFather back into itself. So it's a counterflow chiller. Cold water is in one pipe going over the wort, which is hot, in another pipe going in the opposite direction. So I need this pipe here, which is the wort being recirculated, to cool down. And once it cools down, I will then transfer it into the fermenter. And the water here is hot. So it's a heat transfer, and I'll use this water then just for cleaning my bits and pieces. So I do need this to cool right down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the flow on that. Pretty much bring that to a trickle. This is a sanitized thermometer. It's 23 at the moment. So as I said, I had that nice, and you can see that it's a fairly slow trickle. Hopefully that's shown on the camera. And that should be good. What I need to do now is knock off the pump, let that kind of just drain out. The cold water is still flowing through. Give that a bit of a shake. Drop that into my fermenter. Put the lid back on. Hit the pump again. And that's trickling through nice and slowly. I believe a mistake that a lot of people were making when they were cooling the wort down was they were recirculating it through the GrainFather. You're not supposed to do that at all. basically you're supposed to change the flow rate, bring it right down, and as soon as that's cool or cold or 23, 22 degrees, transfer it at that rate, that slow rate, into your fermenter, and just look, it'll take some time, but it'll go through at a nice temperature. You're probably looking between 17, 18, 19, 20, 22 or 23. I'm hoping mid-range there for about 20. If I can get that to 20, perfect. I might just speed it up a tiny bit, tiny fraction. Just a word of warning on the heat transfer. So our cold water, as I said, is coming in from the outside. Make sure that's a nice steady rate. Don't slow the cold water down like the wort. So the wort is going in fairly slow, but that's coming out fairly quickly. The cold water in, hot water out. You probably want this speed about 4 times faster than the flow of the wort, for the reason that it gets maximum heat transfer in the actual wort chiller. So the wort itself is going around quite slowly, and the cold water is coming in quite quickly. So the cold water is traveling over that wort quite fast, and it's really cooling it down to probably about, I think it's about 18 or 19 here now. I'll do a reading. It's actually 15. Speak that up. Okay, so my post-boil gravity was 1070, and I need to bring that down to 1060. So to do that, I used the dilution tool on Beardsmith. And it told me to add 3 litres of water, so I've done that now. So I basically just need to give it a good old mix. I've put Star San on my hands, and what I want to do is just aerate this, and that's pretty much how I do it. Is go down with jabs, and you can see that does the trick. Good aeration for the yeast. I've just popped the top of the yeast, my safe ale, into some Star San, and the scissors has been in some Star San. So whip that off and just add the yeast over the top. I don't even mix it in. This has worked quite well for me over the last year or two, this process, this method. I was literally just letting it sit on top of the foam. Just make sure you use every single piece. Stick back on my sanitized lid. Now what I do is I don't put any sanitizer in the airlock yet, because I have to bring this upstairs. So what I like to do is not have it closed tight. I'd made this mistake once before where that's tight, and I had some, I don't think it was Star San at the time, because I would have been fine with Star San, but it was another sanitizer that shouldn't have gone into the beer, and I picked it up and it was all sucked out into the beer, and I ruined the beer, my first ever brew. So I'll just leave the lid slightly loose, and that's me done for today.